Uno.
I was going to start singing Smooth Operator, but welcome to the Delta F1 podcast. You're pissed off to all things F1 and more. I thought about
Carlos
playing
Sainz.
Smooth Operator, but I was worried about copyright, so I didn't play that. But maybe not the most eventful race. It's actually probably one of the few times that Max Verstappen being out of the race actually made it less entertaining. But a huge congratulations to Carlos Sainz, who just 16 days after having his appendix removed was able to go out and clinch victory, lead the 1-2 for Ferrari.
You said less interesting. If anything, it was the same.
But my point is if Max Verstappen was in the race, there would have been presumably a battle for the lead.
Well, yeah, Carlos Sainz did say that after the track. He says he felt pretty good after lap 2. And that was even before Max had the issues. But yeah, I mean, the first couple laps before he took him over, he was definitely in his DRS. So props to him. It just goes to show you the appendix was a thing. I think he's the last one to win he's the only driver to win the last 2 years besides Max, huh? Isn't that crazy?
And Checo.
Oh, and Checo, yeah. Outside of Red Bull, that's what I meant.
Outside of Red Bull.
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's absurd, and he's also the driver who now finds himself without a seat.
Definitely not after this race. You got to give it to him. You got to give it to him because he outperformed Charles. He had a better qualifying session. Obviously, he started P2. Charles even gave it to him. After that, give him props. They couldn't finish even better than 1 and 2. But Carlos Sainz, especially, I mean, he was still laying in bed after the Bahrain or Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. He was still recovering. He still wasn't full 100%. He was. I don't think he was able to even do the simulation. Leading up to the Australian Grand Prix. But deep into the week, I think last week he started feeling better. He started training a little bit better. I mean, you saw him lift up his shirt. He still had the little patch over his
still had the patches over the incisions
or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, props to him. He didn't feel 100%, but he did a very good job, and I'd be very surprised if there's not a handful of teams, competitive teams next year, looking to add him to the roster.
Right. Well, yeah, and that was the only time he looked 100% was when he was in the car.
Yep.
He'd be hobbling around. But then, he'd get into the car and there was no hobbling. He didn't put a foot wrong. He drove a flawless weekend.
Well, I mean, Ferrari played it well. There's always those jokes and that banter of them, messing things up. But it was a perfect race for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, Max ended up having his issues. He, wasn't able to finish, and then Sergio just did not perform pretty well to Red Bull standards to make up for Max's DNF. But they were able to cover McLaren pretty quickly, Lando and everything like that. And with Mercedes' woes, it was just done deal. It was given to them, so props for them.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, to your point, Ferrari had a very Red Bull-esque race weekend.
Right.
Really. Their pit stops all were good. Their strategy calls were good. And they had the car to take the fight to Red Bull. But going on to your second point, my question for you is Perez doing enough?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question, but it's early on into the season. Obviously, that's the third race. The last 2 races, he had finished second, right behind Max. So up until then, he did. I think they just honestly didn't. I think I heard Checo say afterwards they just didn't bring the best setup for that track. The heat of the track and the weather and everything like that just, drained their tires pretty well. Checo didn't really have the speed, and I mean, you could argue he could have performed a little bit better, but I think Ferrari and McLaren were on point, and they did very good things, and it was hard for them to beat. And then it just hurt him starting back into the field, especially with that grid penalty. Blocking, was it Nico or something like that? Nico Hulkenberg or Kevin Magnussen ended up, the 3 place grids drop. So I'm sure that that messed him up. I think he would have been higher, maybe in top 3 podium places if he didn't have that grid drop. So I think that hurt him, that hindered him, and then overall they just didn't have the best setup leading up to the actual race day, and it stopped him. So to answer your question, I think this obviously is a little bit asterisk because of what happened, but I don't think based off the first 3 races right now, you don't not keep him. I think he's still worthy of keeping that, second seat in Red Bull.
Yeah, so he finished the race in what, 5th?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I to answer my own question, I personally don't think he's doing enough. Like, you
Well, what
have to be
more
there
could
to
you
pick
have
up the
wanted?
scraps. A podium,
I know.
a
Okay,
4th
I
place.
get that. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I'm like, that's just what ifs. You know what I mean? Like, he just didn't have it, and I don't think you can just put a blame on him. The grid place penalty
Right.
wasn't. I mean, that if it wasn't for that, I think we wouldn't be talking about that. He would have finished top 3 easily, in my opinion. But it's just unfortunate, and it's one race, and he's finished second the last 2 races. Like, obviously,
Yeah, but
aside from beating Max, which is not going to
he
happen.
finished second on the slam dunk victories, right? Like, he finished second in the races where Max Verstappen was completely outside of his league, and then
Oh yeah,
then that's when he goes on to finish second. You know,
well, it just goes to show you. I mean, Max being in the sport, dominating, like, plays a huge role in everything. You know what I mean? I
right?
mean, they were just once Max was out. I think Red Bull started shaking a little bit because I don't think they fully trust in Ser and Checo to pick up the scraps, at least not every time. You know what I mean? But
Right.
who's to say that a Carlos Sainz can do it or Fernando Alonso can do it? You know what I mean? I think he's earned his spot. In my opinion, he has not done anything to lose his spot right now. But given the history of what Red Bull and Christian Horner, everything like that, how quickly they can make these decisions, it would
Mm-hmm.
not be surprising if they let him go. Now, if he continues to do this, and he starts, not finishing second or third, or not even finishing the podium for,
But he's done
another
this for the
5.
last 2 years. He was fighting with Lewis Hamilton in the third fastest car of the season for P2 in the championship. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and then when Max
Right.
isn't in the race, he can't even scavenge a podium. Or okay, maybe the Ferraris were in a league of their own in a sense, and fast enough that with a Red Bull being stuck behind, um, with a grid penalty, okay, maybe he couldn't have gotten a top 2 spot, but he should have been able to pick off, I think, at least one McLaren, right? I mean, you saw when he went by Russell, when he went by Hamilton, both drivers were like, wow, that car's a rocket ship. And they got passed by every other car throughout the weekend. I don't recall them saying that
Mm-hmm.
to anyone else, you know? And then he couldn't even drop
They
Fernando. Fernando
there's
stayed with him
a
for a long time.
there's a statement that apparently he sustained some damage while gaining on Fernando Alonso. Says he did pretty good on the first stint coming to the field, hard tire as he
Mm-hmm.
closed in on Fernando. He was strong, matching that pace of the leaders, and then he passed Fernando. He picked up a tear off underneath the floor, and it got lodged in an area that caused significant load loss.
Hmm.
So the car wasn't working as it should afterwards. That's his quote. So obviously that probably made a big
Yeah,
difference
we'll
in him
see.
as well. But
We'll
overall,
see.
he wasn't. I can agree with you. He was not as quick as he should, but maybe that was the deciding factor as far as what ultimately led him to finishing 5th.
Yeah, the tear offs are an interesting thing. I mean, getting caught in brake ducts, I think, a few races now in a row, and it's gives a
Speaking
sense of Mario Kart the way they're able to just throw them out onto the
speaking
track.
about Red Bull and all that, I saw
Mm-hmm.
a post. I don't know how valid or 100% confirmed this is, but there was a post basically saying Helmut Marko was giving an ultimatum similar to what he did with Nick DeVries
To
to
Ricardo.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Mm-hmm.
That if he doesn't do well in the next 2 races, that Liam Lawson would take his seat.
Yeah.
Now, personally, you being a big Danny Rick fan, me not so much. I'm not that I hate the guy. He did have a pretty off race, considering that Yuki finished in the points.
Yeah.
So, what are
No,
your
I
thoughts
mean,
on that?
I agree. If you ask me the same question that I asked about Perez, that if he's doing enough, he's not. You know, I mean, he had a clumsy spin in Saudi Arabia, and yeah, I mean, drivers spin, drivers crash, okay, but just a not very convincing race. He hasn't looked convincing in the car, and he doesn't look like a Red Bull Daniel Ricciardo. He looks like the same, you know, he looks like the same McLaren Ricciardo at the moment. And yeah, I certainly don't think that Daniel Ricciardo is doing enough. And, in
Well,
my eyes.
as far as keeping it in the team, right, within subject of the two teams,
Mm-hmm.
we've always had the discussion, and you've kind of gone against. I've gone against the grain, where I've told you that if the second seat for Red Bull
Mm-hmm.
was to be up for grabs, and it was supposed to be given to either Daniel Ricciardo or Yuki, I've always thought Yuki would deserve the chance a little bit better than Ricciardo. And
Right.
I think ultimately, I know it's early, 3 races in, but
Mm-hmm.
Yuki's been doing okay. He finished in the points. He had a good season. Yes, he has his temper tantrums, but I'm like, Max has his tantrums too. Look at what he said about the comments of if he was in Logan's position. He said he
You'd
won. He
smash the
says
car.
he would smash the car so nobody else would drive it, and then he would have left.
Yeah.
He would have gone on the plane and left. Obviously, he has the luxury to do that because he has a, $50 million private jet. He can go
Yeah.
home or whatever, visit his family or whatnot. So he can do that. But I'm like, Yuki's verbally, pretty much the same. So I would love to see it. If it came to that, I think that would be crazy to see Yuki and Max. But I it's hard to say that. It's hard to compete, but Ricardo isn't doing enough. And like you said, you support him. I think he's a great guy, but I mean, even last season, I don't think he was doing good enough, and he still isn't this year. And if that statement is true, where Helmut Marko has been giving him an ultimatum, I think it's well deserved, because Liam Lawson proved to you last season that he did enough to open up some eyes and maximize his opportunity for what he was given, and he might get a seat, and I think he
Yeah.
deserves it based off
Yeah,
what
no,
he's
I
been
definitely
doing
think
versus Ricardo.
I definitely think Liam Lawson deserves a seat in F1. But I think the big difference between Max and Yuki is Yuki's aggression verbally at least does translate to him losing his head in the race, because
Mm-hmm.
Max can lash out verbally, but he'll do
Right.
so while still being on pace. He'll do so while still, going on. And I'm sorry, but he has the right to be able to lash out verbally, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's in a different position for sure.
He's
Yeah,
in
he
a
has.
way different position.
I agree. I think it'd be interesting, but like I said, it'll be interesting to see how it ends in the very season. I mean, based off right now, three races in, do you think Visa, Cash App, Red Bull, and Red Bull? Do you think those four drivers are still in the same seat by the end of the season?
I think there'll be a huge mix up, and I think Red Bull's in a much worse position than anyone.
Really?
Like I wouldn't say a worse position. How do you say this? Because I think they can attract drivers from
I'm just talking about the whole
different.
like right now until the end of the season. Do you see Checo being cut or dropped, or do you see Ricardo being dropped, or Yuki? Obviously, Max, you're not going to see him get dropped. So, do you think they'll make some switches in those three seats in the
I
2024 season?
could see the. I think it would be crazy, but I could see the ultimatum being given to Ricardo, as if to if he's not performing, that Liam Lawson will take a seat, and part of it's because Liam Lawson did do a great job, and I think he deserves to be in F1. And but the other side of it is like Daniel Ricciardo is so marketable, like that's a big part of
I
the
know,
appeal of
but
Daniel Ricciardo. But where does that lead to with performance? Because
it has nothing to do with the
being a
race.
reserve driver for
Red Bull.
Red Bull, they were still using him in
Yeah,
advertisements. They were still using him for their social media. Um,
I don't
but
think so.
I don't think if you're developing the Red Bull Academy, I don't see why you'd keep Daniel an underperforming social media star in your car. I don't see why you want to bring up a talent, like Liam Lawson to
Right.
compete and see what he can do. But I do
I
think
think that
I think they're in a really tough position though, because I feel if they were going to put Yuki in the Red Bull seat, they would have already done that. They would have already
yeah,
dropped Perez, and they would have already done that. I
yeah,
don't
but I feel
think
like
the Yuki is there not because he's not a great driver, but his ties to Honda is what put him there,
Hmm.
like definitively.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to bring Liam Lawson and just throw him up in the second seat of Red Bull. You've seen what that does, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, I think they're in a very interesting position because they have drivers in two seats that are kind of like that. There's not full faith in.
Underperforming.
Yeah, there's not full faith in.
They're just there to fill the spot, maybe.
I don't think just there to fill the seat. I think that they're both drivers with good potential. But you look at McLaren and you go, that's a great driver lineup. I don't see that. Like, they should keep that as long as they can. You know, you look at Mercedes and outside of Hamilton making his shock announcement to go to Ferrari, you go, that's a good driver lineup, right? But you look at the Visa
Charles and
Cash App
Hamilton's
Red
a
Bull.
great driver on it.
Oh, and that's going to be a phenomenal driver lineup, of course. But
Well,
even
obviously,
Charles and
I
Carlos
mean,
was great.
I know, but I mean, from Ferrari's standpoint, like, how do you not try
Yeah,
or sign
yeah. If you
Lewis? You
can,
know what
you
I mean?
do. Yeah,
It'll be interesting. I think it's just a conversation I have and keep our eyes on it, but we'll see. Moving along
yeah.
to another interesting topic that was before the race.
Hmm.
Logan getting his kicked out of his own car, man. That was rough. That was rough to hear. It was very surprising
Yeah.
to kind of back what Max said, just thinking, radically and just not, thinking smartly. I would have been very mad. And rightfully so, I think Logan, but just goes back to the history and the track record of what Alex has done. He's been a decent driver, especially in Williams, getting as much as he can out of that car. So when it came to that decision, I know that's a big, tough decision to make. So I can understand it. Is it my understanding that because they're a smaller team in Williams, they did not have a spare chassis? Do other bigger teams have that or no? Or is it just across the
I,
whole track or the whole paddock?
I think that whole situation is embarrassing on Williams' part. I think the
Yeah.
whole situation is so embarrassing because we're now in the third race of the season and they don't have a spare chassis, right? You know, the last time that this happened, I think, was with Haas, and that was simply because the car got stuck at customs, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
the time before that was just because Nikita and Max crashed too many. You know, they just literally didn't like. You know that it's not common at all. It's not because they're a small team that they didn't have another chassis. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. And then if you don't have another chassis, what are you doing sending Alex Albon out to push in FP1 on a track that you know is going to rubber in?
Well, is it that they didn't have another one or just didn't have another one there in Australia?
Why, if you have
I
another
think,
one, why aren't you bringing it?
it's my understanding, I think they had it back in the UK. They just didn't have it in Australia.
So, and then again, then why take the risk
Well, yeah, I know
of putting a car
it's
into a wall?
bad regardless. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, do you agree with the move though? With if
No,
having only one car being able to run, do you think that's the right move,
no.
or
And
do you think
you
you
know
kind
why?
of?
Because Alex didn't get points.
Well, that's hard to say though. I mean, obviously he didn't, but if he would have, would have been the right decision on
Maybe
moral
you could have
standpoint. You know what I mean?
justified it, but go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, it's a tough decision to make, but I understand why they made it. I do,
Yeah.
because they're trying to maximize the points, and ultimately, I mean, Haas really took advantage of Hamilton and Max being out because they finished in the points, both of them, so they
Yeah.
gained a lot of points compared to Williams. So there was a
Hmm.
lot of points to be maximized for those smaller, mid-sized teams. Williams, like you said, Albon didn't finish in the points, so it was a risk. But you can also argue that more than likely Logan wouldn't have finished in the points either. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I
Based off
mean,
track record, based off what he's done. I
right.
think he's only finished in the points one time in his career in the last year and 3 races.
Hmm.
And that was due to the fact that Charles and Lewis got eliminated or penalized for the floor of the car being too worn off or whatnot. But
Right.
that was like automated, so he didn't really earn it on track. So I don't think, regardless, like, there was a right decision made, but I don't think Logan would have been finishing in the points to, or even remotely finish. What did Alex finish? 11th. or 12th?
I
11th.
think he finished
So
11th.
uh, you can even argue that I personally don't believe Logan would have finished 11th. Regardless, 10 and below, you're not in the points, but I just don't think it would have been good enough. It's a tough decision to make. I understand why they made it, but I also understand Logan's right to be upset and frustrated about that.
Yeah, but I mean, you're taking someone who Logan didn't make the mistake, right? The team and
Absolutely.
Alex
Absolutely.
made the mistake. The team made two big mistakes. They one, if they have another car, they didn't have it in Australia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which that's no fault of Logan's or anyone else's, right?
Yeah.
That's only fault of their own. And then, James Vowes, like he came out on the weekend, like before the weekend, saying how resource strapped Williams is, that they're making the car in Excel. And I'm sorry, but like that's not an excuse. They were still using Excel the last 30 years, right? So, like what you have to do. And with F1 teams being more profitable than ever, I don't know how you just don't have another car there. And then if you don't, why you would take that risk. And
Yeah.
and James Vowes, I mean, if you ask me what driver is more likely to score points on any given weekend, I would bet on Alex every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt. But then it's like two things. Why keep Logan? And then two, why make that call again as a team perspective?
So
Even
if you
if
were,
you are even kind of a fan of F1 or even kind of understand like racing, like that track's going to rubber in the difference between FP1 and FP3 in terms of like the track being rubbered in is massive. Why are you
mm-hmm.
running a qualifying sim in FP1?
So if you were James Value, based on the circumstances, you would have kept Alex out of the race. When you're looking at the team
It's
standpoint of
I think the team made a lot of
maximizing that
mistakes.
opportunity.
I think the team made a lot of
Okay.
mistakes, and as much as you want to put Alex in the car, it it's just a bad look. I think to punish Logan like that. I think the only other team that would do something like that is possibly Red Bull,
Well,
but they're not showing up without spares.
yeah, for sure. But they're also a bigger team, though. So I do think that plays a part as far as what Williams' standpoint. But I do understand the aspect that it is 2024, and this did happen. My question is, if they did have a spare, which I'm understanding they did, I just didn't have it there in Australia. Why not? Especially knowing how far
Yeah,
Australia is to to their hub. You know what I mean? I
right.
mean,
And
obviously, it's not
knowing
very
that,
common that this happens, but
so what does
it's
that mean?
it's
They showed
it's,
up.
it's
That means they went to Saudi with without
without
a
it. Maybe
spare. They went
they
to
probably don't.
Australia without the spare. And those are both, we forget because there's gravel and beautiful grass. It's a street circuit. The walls are there, and
Yeah,
those are both fast street circuits. If you're gonna, mangle
right.
a monocoque, it's probably gonna be there. Crash like F1 drivers are gonna crash, right? Like you can't put the blame solely on Alex because he crashed a car. Ultimately it is he did make the error, he did crash the car, but that's to be expected, right? Like Max hasn't crashed in a year and a half, 2 years, but that doesn't set like the standard. Like it happens, drivers crash.
Right.
So
No, it's
I
very
don't know.
interesting. It's unfortunate. I'm pretty sure that's probably the last time that it'll ever happen to Williams without them traveling with three cars. But it is what it is.
Well now if they just had the extra car, so what, they have to make another one?
Right.
Because now
That's
they're
true.
back down to two cars if they have the extra one, right?
Well, I think they were just fixing the one that Alex messed up. So
Yeah.
I don't know. They just didn't have the
No,
parts or something.
I just think it's pretty embarrassing. I think it's a massive disappointment. I think the way everyone handled it was uh, wrong. Again, like I'll repeat myself. I think it was wrong for Williams to send Alex out the way they did. I think it was wrong for them to take Logan out, and I think it was wrong even just how Julian Palmer and like all of them were talking about it too. Like just blatantly saying like on broadcast that Logan's only there for one reason, and it's money, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I think the whole situation is a bit embarrassing because, I don't know if you know about Julian Palmer. Yeah, he was an F1 driver, but he raced in 2 seasons and scored single-digit points in his career.
Right.
So, he's not miles ahead of Logan Sargent's trajectory. And
Right.
Julian Palmer grew up with a dad who had experience racing in F1, who had experience racing, was a successful businessman, and owned a racetrack. So, like I said, I just think it's very embarrassing how the whole situation was
Yeah.
handled.
Hopefully it doesn't happen again. I don't
Yeah.
think it will, but moving on to another big headline, or not mid race, towards the end of the race, Alonso and the Russell crash, dude. That
Yeah.
was obviously our race ended around what 11:30 midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and I did watch a little bit of the recap. Went to bed, woke up, and I was like, saw the news that Aston Martin driver Alonso got a penalty, and I'm like, what? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts? Do you think he deserved that penalty for causing the
Yes.
crash?
Yes.
I mean, obviously, statistics based on the analytics, he did obviously slow down way before he had to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I, it's just for me. I get it because it is. I just do you think he would have gotten that penalty if Russell didn't crash as bad?
No.
Like if he would have
Oh,
just spun out.
if no, I think maybe if he spun out, he still would have gotten the penalty. But I think if Russell didn't crash, the penalty wouldn't have been given. And so, and this is the interesting thing when penalties are given and they base it off of consequences rather than like just the sole
Yeah.
action. And I think sometimes you have to look at the consequences, and I think sometimes you just have to look at the action, right? And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, Alonso caused a dangerous situation,
Yeah.
and and it
He's
and
smart
just
about
none
it
of it.
though. He's smart about it.
Yeah,
Did you heard him on
he's
the radio that he had something stuck in his pedal or something? He tried to play it off, and then after the race, you can hear it. I can hear it in the video of his driver cam, and it sounds like the engine's misfiring. I'm sure he's for mine. I don't know. Maybe he's doing something to it to make it sound like that. He's not dumb, obviously, but
yeah.
yeah, I'm sure he saw him spun around and crash, and he's like, "Oh, I don't remember what he said, but he said there's something in the pedal. It's stuck."
Dude, he is the
It's
most
crazy. Right?
slot. Like he is the most like, dude.
It's just funny,
He's
dude. It's
not
crazy.
dumb. Is the thing. Like he's not dumb. But sometimes it's just so obvious, like what he's trying to do, and I don't think I
It is
don't
funny, dude.
think he did not mean to make Russell crash, right? Like
Oh no,
he probably saw the dust kick up, and he was like, "Oh fuck." He
he
was
knew what he
like,
did.
he's like, "What have I done?"
I wonder how shortly after he saw the dust, he actually made that comment.
Oh my! It had to have been. Oh, I didn't even know about that comment, but that makes it so fucking good.
I'm trying to see if we can play it, bro.
Oh
But
my gosh, that's so funny.
it was just
He sees him crash. He just gets on the radio. Oh my! Something was stuck under my pedal. Oh
that's what he said. I think I'm trying to see.
wow!
Let's see. I don't remember what he said. Let's see. I'm trying to look it up. But I was like, what are you? He's just trying to play it off.
Yeah,
Like it just goes back to saying, like, he says, like, he's not dumb, so he knows what he's trying to do. And then after the race, you see his post race. He's like, I think he
yeah.
said it again, like he had issues like prior to that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and so he was having issues, from my understanding, with the battery. Um, but So I get what he was doing in a sense, like, because if you're racing somebody and you know that, like, okay, I'm slower on the straights, you ideally want to do something to somewhat compromise their exit. But I think just the way he went about it was a little over the line. Like, it was definitely like,
Yeah,
because
but I
if
think we
Russell
can all
didn't
agree he
crash,
did
if
not mean to
Russell
do that,
didn't,
you know?
oh, he didn't mean to make him crash. No, God, no. No, because if Russell would have just had like a little oversteer moment, caught it, didn't catch him, you would have been like, that was a little like over the line. That was a little bit like hard racing, like a little cheeky, a little like aggressive.
I'm watching a
But
side to side comparison between lap 57 and lap 58 when the crash happened, and it's just like the throttle versus the brake, like
he broke 100
odometer.
meters earlier,
Yeah,
or
and it just
he
he
let off
did
100 meters earlier, downshifted, and then you see him get back on the gas because he like way overslowed, and then have to slow
because
down
Alonso
again.
did have some problem with his throttle.
What happened?
Apparently, evidence does show that the problem with the throttle, as the telemetry showed, is correct. I don't know. I
But
don't know what.
he when he went to the stewards though, he admitted that he made a mistake. Like he said, like in the stewards briefing, like in the briefing
Oh,
after the
really?
race, that he was trying to get a better exit out of that corner.
Mm-hmm. Going back to Russell, dude, you can hear it in his helmet cam how scared he was because he was in the middle of the track, which
Well,
rightfully
and
so, dude.
yeah, well he couldn't see what was coming,
Oh
and
yeah, no, it's always so
I'm
scary.
sure, like, if you're like monitoring the gap behind, like if the team's in your like, oh, Stroll's 5 seconds behind, like you hit that wall and you're probably thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you're probably thinking there's a car coming at
Right.
you full speed. And then just to see them put a virtual safety car, you're probably like, what is happening right now?
People,
Um,
I think people were slamming Russell because they were like, "Oh, he only wanted a red flag so he can get in the points." I'm like, I don't think that was the case. I don't think
no,
that's what he was trying
no,
to
I
do.
think he was sideways,
Generally
sitting
scared.
sitting in a very bad place because cars go through there at like 120
I
miles an
mean,
hour,
literally in the
130
middle of the
miles an hour,
track.
and
It's
it's
the middle of the
blind.
track. There's nothing.
And I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure going into that corner, you see it when you come up to the braking zone, but like that's a terrible place to be.
that's not enough time to react if you're going full speed.
Yeah, because you're already coming in hard on
But
the brakes. So like,
it goes to show you how the car, obviously, the tether to the tires is kept the car together. But I mean, it's not perfect because you can argue that Russell wouldn't have been propped the way he was if the tires were gone. You know what I mean?
but I don't think it would have been any better if he wasn't propped the way he
Oh no, I'm
was.
just saying. Like, I just feel like people. There's no win-win. Like whether with if the
Yeah,
tires, obviously, if the tires fall off,
fly
obviously
off
that's a risk towards us pedestrians or people around
or other
the track and
drivers. Yeah.
whatnot, or
Hmm.
other drivers if they're close enough. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But then this happens, which we've seen this. It doesn't happen very often. The way it propped Russell up, that's
Yeah.
not a very common mannerism that the car makes, but during a
No,
crash.
and I
But it's
would
just
and I would argue that it didn't make it any. I don't think that put him in any of the harm. If there was more momentum, maybe it could have made the car flip. You could argue, but
probably
then again, like, what's the alternative? Get rid
get
of
up a
the. I don't.
halo.
I'm not smart enough to know like what the alternative is. Like you have roll hoops, you have the halo, but
It was
still,
just
you
funny
don't
what
want
Alonso
tires.
said though.
Yeah, hold on. So I pulled up
I'm
the
trying to.
onboard. I pulled up Alonso's onboard, and I want to hear if you can.
All right.
I pulled up the onboard right before the crash. Let me see.
He says problems with
Okay,
the throttle or something.
so you're supposed to be able to hear if he talks. So they're going into that corner right now. George Russell flies up on him, loses it.
So he doesn't say it very soon after.
So you are all clear behind now. Problems on the throttle.
So he didn't say it shortly right after.
Slow down, get your delta positive.
Is this anything else? I don't know. We could have been having problems with the throttle too, but it's just interesting that he would admit that he made a mistake. Because the car sounds not right.
Well, yeah, it doesn't sound right there. Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
So Russell has reported that he's okay for them. Just through this virtual safety car, just positive at safety car. You're good on your delta. Nobody's in the pits. So there's one more lap to go, one more lap. Check the throttle. Yeah, we can see that, yeah. Something's failing.
Yeah. So,
it is interesting, nonetheless.
Well, I mean, the fact that...
Okay?
That was him going past the crash.
Well, is he okay? Yeah, he's reported that he's alright, but he has come on already to say he's okay.
But yeah, I think if he had a failure, that's one thing to a degree. But, you know, kind of what happened there looked so strange. And, yeah, they were having car issues. But I think he literally did say he was trying to let off early. But maybe if he tried to do that and he was, like, working around an issue too, maybe he just misjudged it, you know, and the car decelled more aggressively than he thought it would. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities, but he still ultimately caused he still lifted,
Pretty
like
bad
the
crash.
telemetry shows, he still lifted and hit the brakes enough, like 100 meters earlier than normal, which put Russell into a dangerous situation. So I think the penalty was justified, and it also wasn't that harsh because it didn't really change anything too much. It promoted Stroll to 7th and dropped Fernando to 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And so they still got double points, and you know, I think they still ultimately, you know, 20 seconds sounds harsh, but they're doing 10 seconds as the baseline now. So I think that's also something
So
to
they're
keep
just
in mind.
doubling it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I
rough.
kind of agree with you.
Yeah, but
agree with you. Overall,
the tweet was interesting though. Did you see his tweet?
No, what do you say?
He tweeted about, like, he was trying to compare it to like his other defensive races and saying it's like the beauty of motorsports, you know, like, you know, the way you can defend, but it wasn't like it was like a massive defense, really. I don't know. I didn't think it was.
Yeah, he was along. It is what it is. I think recapping the whole race, I think we kind of got excited when Max got, you know, problems, and then he started slowing down, car started passing, and I was like, oh, like I know I got excited.
And then his car farted.
I jumped in my seat. Yeah, and then his car farted in the pit lane. I know I got excited because I'm like, dude, it was crazy because leading up to the race, like I knew, and I know you probably won't believe me, but I wanted to put money on Sainz, bro, just for the crack.
Really? You should have.
And then I was like, oh, like I should have. I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the odds are probably like 350. So depending on how much money I would have put down, would have been good. But I was just like, I did get excited. I jumped in my seat, and I was like, oh my god, like someone else is gonna win, you know? And thankfully, I mean, Sainz won. I would have loved Leclerc to win, but Sainz has been on point, dude. I like him. You can't hate him.
Yeah,
it's been smooth, bro.
Yeah, no, he had a flawless weekend, and yeah, you definitely can't hate him. He's a good guy. He deserves a seat in F1. I hope it's with a competitive team as well. But yeah, no, I mean, to add to your point, like, of being excited, when I didn't watch the race live, right? Mm-hmm. I was out and about, and I checked my phone because I thought the race started at 10, and it started at 9. And so I checked my phone at 10, an hour into the race, and I see Hamilton and Verstappen out, and I'm like, what? I literally like jumped because I didn't know what was happening. I was like so excited. I was like, I like turned off my phone right away. I was like, I am not watching this until I can see literally everything that happened. And then it was literally on lap 3 that Verstappen starts having issues. And I was just like, I could not believe it.
Yeah, probably kind of crazy because Red Bull's been known for. I mean, last year they had extremely good reliability. You know what I mean? Like they,
Yeah. Dude,
E-
I have to pee
even
so bad. I will be right back.
what are you talking about,
I have to
bro?
pee.
No,
I have to pee. I'm
hold
going
it,
to
dude.
pee myself. I've been holding it for
Hold
40
it.
minutes and 25 seconds. I'm going to pee. I'll be right back.
Oh my god, dude, you're joking me. You're gonna. Can't believe this guy. Whoa. Max and Lewis both DNFing since I believe Silverstone in 2021, where they were going head to head. That was the last time both of these drivers DNF'd. Been pretty long time, pretty good stretch without that ever happening. Pretty unfortunate for Mercedes of what they've been going through the last 3 races. As we hear this.
Wasn't it
For
Monza
you?
that they both DNF'd? Not.
No, it was Silverstone.
No, Silverstone, Lewis won.
Oh, right. Monza, you're right. When Max landed on top of Lewis.
Yeah, and he was like, whoa.
If it wasn't for
Like
the
that.
halo, you would have been seriously hurt. Anyways, for you having to
Lewis got smushed.
hold it for 40 minutes, you either have a small bladder or you're relying.
About what, peeing?
Dude, you peed so quick. When I need to pee and I've been holding it,
Pissed off.
is that all that matcha? Was your pee green?
Smell bad too. Anyways.
It's the matcha. Anyways, now that we recapped Australia, moving forward to, unfortunately, not this week's race, but next week's.
Yes.
The 6th. Gotta wait another week. We were going back. Remember I told you, like, race, then a week off. Race, then a week off. Until when? Like, it's going to be like that for the next 3 races, which is too long. Yeah. What are your initial thoughts on another late Saturday race for us here in the U.S.?
The West Coast. Is nice. Yeah, kind of nice to have the sessions watchable.
It's probably this is what Europeans similar, right? Time wise, you know, they get to watch it after work, probably in the evenings or whatnot. Just get the luxury to do it, unlike us here, Americans.
Yeah, and then when they brought the race, the Vegas Grand Prix, they were trying to do it like midnight. Like,
I know.
I don't know, weirdos. But anyways,
Japanese
Grand Prix. I think that I think we'll be back to things proceeds as normal. I think it'll be a good weekend for Red Bull. Their car should do well there. It's a smooth surface. It's a high energy track, you know, and it's a fast track, and it will be interesting. I think the McLaren should be very competitive. I think the Ferraris will be competitive as well. We'll see what kind of happens between Mercedes and Aston Martin. That's kind of the big question mark. Mercedes keeps saying that they'll figure it out, and we'll see. But yeah, they're trying to look good.
No
for
wonder
Maxi
Lewis
too.
left.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think it'd be. I mean, that's always a fun track. Heavy on the tires, but you know, Red Bull. I think they're going to be back on it. I really like how early they're doing it this year compared to the last seasons. You know what I mean? It's early, 4th race into the season, which is probably geographically makes sense with Australia being there. So I think that's smart of them. But I like the Japanese Grand Prix. Hopefully there's no rain. Usually there's rain in the forecast now.
Sometimes, yeah. Hopefully there's no rain. Hopefully it's just a good dry race. It's a cool track. I mean, I love the
I
Japanese
love it
track.
too.
It's so
So
technical,
here's
so fast.
Max. If he would have won on Saturday, technically Sunday in Australia, um, that would have been 10 races in a row, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think he's gonna do it again.
Another 10 races.
Yeah, why not?
It's very
I was
possible because when is so Singapore is the track that caught him out last time.
oh,
I don't know if it would catch him out again. When is Singapore?
especially because he was like coming back. So right now, if he were to win, let's say he wins the Japanese 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he would break 10 again at the Hungarian Grand Prix. So then 11 would be Belgian, 12th would be the Dutch. I think 12th would be and then 13th would be Italian, 14. It wouldn't be until the
Azerbaijan.
15th race in Singapore.
If they again have, and who knows, they could just do better. They could figure out what caught him out and do a better job.
Japanese, Chinese.
But yeah, I mean, if
Very
you break
possible.
it down, what Japan, the Red Bull should be good. I think China,
Chinese.
given that there's some longer, slower speed corners, the McLarens aren't going to be massively competitive. Should be a good one for Max. I think Max has won every Miami GP. So there's that. Then there's Italy. Well, the Red Bull's very quick in a straight line, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Then there's Monaco. Checo won it 2 years ago. Max won it this year, so Red Bull has no history of a bad track record there. Canada, another track that I don't foresee any issues at. It's some long straights and some slow technical bits. Spain, don't seem having issues there. Austria, I don't think Max contractually is allowed to lose there, so he'll have to win. The Silverstone, they've been strong there. It should be a good race. Like, that track lends itself to good racing. But then Hungary, another track where Max has done well. Belgium, Max does well. Netherlands, another one. His personal vendetta is to not lose there. Italy, the car's crazy fast in a straight line. Azerbaijan, I think Max would have won that race many times if, he would have won that in 21 even if it wasn't for a tire blowout. And then, Singapore is kind of the question mark, I think. He definitely could go on another run of... He could go on another dominant run. And you know what's even crazier to think about, though? If he didn't have the brake issue, I'm not saying he 100% would have won this weekend, which is nice to say for once. But he would have had... I think
still would have won.
I think he still would have won, ultimately. It's not guaranteed that he would have won, but I think he still would have won. What? I mean, that could have put him in a range of the possibility to win 20 races in a row.
It can still happen, dude. We're only 3 races in of a 24 race season, so watch him in the next 20 races.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right?
Yeah, we'll see. Again, it's just as long as they don't make a step wrong, which I don't think they have or plan to. But I think they'll still just continue to lead the pack, to set the standard in this rule set.
Yeah, we'll catch you guys next episode.
We'll catch you guys next episode. I did see a TikTok though that I might actually follow the trend. This guy, he was watching the race, and he was watching he had the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix on, and he just took a piece of paper and just taped it over Max's name. so that the grid would be everyone behind
someone else.
Yeah. So we might have to start doing that if it gets out of hand again.
Make it more fun, more exciting.
Yeah, Max is in his own class.
I'm excited regardless. It's a fun sport to watch regardless of Max's dominance. But
yeah, even if there's boring on-track racing, the off-track drama is still there. So yeah.
All right.
We'll catch you in the next episode.
That's
Thank
it.
you for tuning in. Delta F1 out.